Bill Gore in San Diego.
Hey guys, David
Scott.
Steinhardt's here.
Hey, Scott Budnick in Los Angeles.
Andy Mills in Santa Cruz.
And Dean Grouden in Lassen.
How many do we have in so far? I'm going to jot those names real quick.
Mr. Steinhardt, this is Adam from Sacramento. Can you speak into the phone? We cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me?
Now we can. Now we can.
Okay.
And Chief Mills, can you speak a little louder as well?
I sure can. Does that help?
Yes, that sounds much better. Thank you.
Hi, Adam, it's Katie. So we have all our locations confirmed on?
Yes.
All right. I think it's time to convene this meeting of the Board of State and Community Corrections, and of course, unusual meeting, as we have 7 locations that we're remotely tuning in on, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to allow us a public location where the members of the public may come in and speak on behalf of any of the items before the board. I would ask those individuals who wish to speak on particular items to make themselves known. I know in Sacramento you can fill out a speaker's card. I'm not sure how the other remote locations will handle that, but I trust you will. I will do my best to make sure that public comment is first and foremost, and I hit that at every juncture. Before we begin the actual text of the meeting, I'd like to congratulate Sheriff Bill Gore and Chief Andy Mills on their recent confirmation by the Senate to the seats on the BSCC, and I appreciate A, your willingness to serve, and B, you making it through that process with very little difficulty. So my appreciation to both of you for that.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you both. To Jeffrey Green, who has now been appointed the Acting Director of Adult Parole. Secretary Diaz, I hope you're both there together in the Sacramento room, and I would ask you to do the oath of office.
I think.
Oh, I thought they wanted to do it on the record.
Oh, what was the plan there, Adam?
We will do it after all the logistics, Linda.
Okay, cool.
We'd also like to thank the Chief Probation Officers of California. We are with them in Garden Grove, and actually just finished a 45-minute presentation to them on emerging issues from the BSCC. It was a good meeting. In the room with us, we have Chief Urtola, who we've pulled away from that meeting to do the business of the state right now. Now some logistics about the teleconference. The meeting in Sacramento will be live streamed. Board members, please do not interact with the recording there, as it is, there's a slight delay. So please don't listen or watch the meeting while you're in the meeting, because it'll get confusing and make this already difficult remote meeting more difficult. When you're speaking, please state your name every time so that all participants know who they're hearing from. Do you want me to go through the locations again?
I don't think
the record?
you need to. No, that's okay.
All right. And moving on, we've already discussed the people who wish to speak, and that will have to be handled in the specific location according to how you choose to manage it. Of course, in Sacramento, as always, please fill out a speaker card and give it to, I think Tracy's present and Adam are present, and you can give it to them if you want to speak. Finally, in this meeting, we think there will be a number of recusals. So board members, please take a moment, review agenda items with the frame of mind whether or not you should be recused on any particular item. You don't need to hang up your phone or leave your location during the discussion of the agenda item. You will just need to let us know by stating your name and your intent to recuse from an agenda item, and then mute your phone. Any questions about the recusal issues of myself or Aaron at this point? Okay. Adam, would you like to take
Call roll.
the roll person by person? So this will require everybody to take the phone off mute so we can see if you're present, and as you state your presence, say, "We are."
Yes, Madam Chair. Chair Penner,
Present?
Mr. Diaz,
Has to be louder, please.
Yeah, you're very faint.
Mr. Green,
Adam? Adam, you're too far from whatever microphone we're having a hard time.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Diaz,
Present.
Mr. Green,
Present.
Mr. Groudon,
Here.
Mr. Gore,
Here?
Mr. Ortola,
Here.
Mr. Bronco,
Here.
Mr. Mills,
Here.
Mr. Budnick,
Here.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Here.
Ms. Tornor.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Regarding the membership, you may or may not know by now that Supervisor Leticia Perez of Kern County and Chief Mark Varela from Ventura County have stepped down from the board. I want to thank them for their service. We expect to hear in the very near future about individuals that will take their spots on the board. We hope to have them in place by our September meeting. And as I jumped the gun earlier, let me say that we want to welcome Jeffrey Green, the newly appointed acting director of adult parole with CDCR. He comes to us with a great deal of law enforcement background. In fact, I think he served on the board as an interim once before, if I'm not mistaken. So, Jeff, this is old news to you. I would invite now Secretary Diaz, while in the Sacramento location, to administer the oath of office to Director Jeff Green.
All right, Jeffrey, raise your right hand. I state your name,
I, Jeffrey Green,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jeff. Yay! A round of applause from across the stage, Jeff. Unlike what you had last time, you just had a room full of people. Director Green, would you like to make any comments? Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure, thank you, Chair Penner. Yeah, it's an honor to be here to serve on the board. I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to working with all the members and staff. Again, with my experience, I actually started quite a ways back with actually Secretary Diaz at CSB Corcoran. So I've been working in the corrections field for some time now, working in the institutions as well as the parole operations for the last 20 years. Again, so I just want to thank you all and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Moving now, Aaron McGuire, I'd like you to announce your presence. I believe you're in Sacramento.
Yes, I'm here, Madam Chair.
All right, good to have you. We'll be turning to you on matters of legal significance in the very near future. Now on to information items. I'm going to begin really briefly only with what happened yesterday because I think this remote meeting makes it hard to go on too very long about specific issues. Katie and I had an opportunity yesterday morning to visit Camp Kilpatrick in LA County. Up in the Malibu Hills, I believe is the location. It was a great visit, although the campus right now has been vacated as a result of mudslides from the fire, the Malibu fire.
Fire, right.
We wanted to see the facility specifically because of what we would consider a softening of a juvenile facility, meaning a cottage environment, a very small unit package, and it was built for very intimate staff to client ratio, and the programming that we did not see in practice but saw by report of staff there is really different. It was a great prototype for maybe what the future of juvenile justice looks like. I was super impressed with just the physical plan. We then left there and went to the main Los Angeles Juvenile Hall, and while it is a very, very old facility, we had an opportunity to view what obviously could use some renovation, but see a unit that Chief McDonald has already renovated to a much softer style, and the difference in them was really, frankly, startling. The new prototype that she has in place is going to be something special, and I'm really looking forward to her to being funded and be able to move her agenda to soften that facility further and further as the years go by. So it was really a great experience. We hope to go to other juvenile campuses in the very near future and report on those on our website so people can see what we perceive to be cutting edge right now. Turning now to Katie Howard for the delivery of the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Chair Penner, and good morning, board members. Really, really pleased and slightly amazed that this 7-location meeting is proceeding relatively smoothly. I want to give just a very, very brief report today. As you may be aware, the Joint Legislative Audit Committee recently approved a request from Assemblymember Joan Sawyer and several other legislators to audit the spending, decision-making, reporting, and evaluation of the JJCPA, the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act. The BSCC will have several questions that it'll need to respond to the auditor in terms of BSCC data collection on that fund, and then 5 counties have been identified for a deeper dive into their data, and that's Los Angeles, San Joaquin, Kern, Santa Barbara, and Mendocino. So we wanted to let you know that that audit was approved, and we'll have an entrance conference at the BSCC in just a couple of weeks. The governor did sign the budget, and as a result of a whole lot of new grant funding, new and or continuing grant funding, we have an extremely full agenda today. So I don't want to go through too much of the breakdown on all those new grants because we'll be talking about them in our action items. I do want to acknowledge there may be some interested board members or members of the public in the room with questions about a variety of general fund pass-through items. Our admin team is putting together all the things that we need to. Following the budget signature, it takes a few weeks for all of those funds to get loaded into various accounts and so on. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Yvonne Garner on our team, but several cities are getting funds related to public safety, illegal dumping. In Los Angeles, there's a Challenger Memorial Youth Center that's getting funding. Some car break-in prevention in some Bay Area cities will be funded, and a handful of other things related to gun violence and so on. Let's see, I wanted to also mention a couple of things on our JAG grant. Our 2018 JAG award of just over $18 million has been released, and we are waiting for a response to our 2019 JAG application submission, which we got in on June 22nd. And then finally, just to let folks know that the upcoming 7th annual Community Corrections Partnership report to the legislature will be released soon. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report. You do have a legislative update in your binders. So at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions of any board member? Any questions from any members of the public? Okay, I'm gonna now turn to the consent item on the agenda, and there is only one. It is the approval of the board meeting minutes from June 13th, 2019. And this will, give us an opportunity to practice voting by using our names, because we have to do that because we're in remote. We are looking, at that consent item. Does anybody wish to pull that item from the agenda or make any corrections or amendments? Hearing none, I would ask for a first and a second to pass this item.
Sheriff, recommend approval.
Okay, we have Mike Rtola and Sheriff Gore, I believe.
I'll do a second then.
All right, we have a first and a second. Looking for approval,
Adam's gonna call the roll.
Adam's gonna call the roll. Go for it, Adam.
Chair Penner,
Approved?
Mr. Diaz,
Approved.
Mr. Green,
Approved.
Mr. Groudon,
Approve.
Mr. Gore,
Approve.
Mr. Otola,
Approved.
Mr. Barranco,
Approve.
Mr. Mills,
Approve.
Mr. Budnick,
Approved.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye. Approve.
Ms. Tornor.
Abstain.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. And we have an abstention and all approval votes. Thank you very much, Adam. Moving now to the action items on the agenda. I'm just going to reiterate one more time, if there are members of the public that wish to speak on any of these items, please let the individuals in your locations know that you wish to speak on those, and we will pause and ready ourselves for that at the appropriate time. Asking staff on item B, the 2019 Youth Reinvestment Grant, appointment of a chair and establishment of an executive steering committee to come to the podium.
And Madam Chair, this is Aaron McGuire speaking. Just wanted to check, I have no listed recusals for this item, but just wanted to check to make sure any other board members, whether or not they wanted to step out on this item. Hearing none. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members near and far. My name is Kimberly Bouchard, and I'm the field representative in the Corrections Planning Grant Programs Division. I have two agenda items this morning, one for the Youth Reinvestment Grant and one for the Tribal Youth Diversion Grant. So we'll go ahead and start out with agenda item B, which is the Youth Reinvestment Grant. As you may recall, last month I was here presenting funding recommendations for 30 new grants under the Youth Reinvestment Grant Program. With your approval of that item, we're working on getting those grants in place using a total of $29.1 million of the $35 million that was available. I'm back before you today to ask for your approval to move forward with the steps required to spend the remaining $5.9 million, as well as a new $5 million that was included in the 2019 Budget Act just recently signed by the governor. Although the budget provides the appropriation, the provisions governing this new round of Youth Reinvestment Grant funding are contained in Assembly Bill 1454, which is currently moving through the legislature. As a policy bill, it is expected to go to the governor by September 13th and be signed by October 13th. Although it is possible that the bill will be amended as it moves through the legislative process, we anticipate any such amendments would be relatively minor. So consequently, we are hoping to get your approval to move forward with grant development without delay. If we begin this work now, we anticipate having new grants in place by this time next year. And just as a reminder, the primary purpose of the Youth Reinvestment Grant Program is the diversion of low-level offenders away from the juvenile justice system and toward community-based alternatives. The legislation specifically calls for this to be done using interventions that are evidence-based, trauma-informed, culturally relevant, and developmentally appropriate. In addition, the funds are intended to target communities with high need. And although the primary purpose and structure of the program remains the same, there are a few differences. Most notably, eligible applicants would no longer be limited to cities and counties. This time, community-based organizations would be eligible to apply directly and receive funding through the BSCC. In addition, departments and agencies within California cities and counties would also be able to apply directly. As with the first round of funding, organizations receiving these funds must have experience at serving at-risk populations and must provide diversion and alternatives to arrest, incarceration, and formal involvement in the juvenile justice system. The interventions funded can include, among other things, academic and vocational education services, mentoring, behavioral health services, and mental health services. The funds allocated for this new grant are available until June 30th of 2024, so we would be able to offer a grant term of at least 3 years. And given that grant development generally takes about 1 year, we are hoping to get started as soon as possible. And with that in mind, we're requesting that you take action today in 3 specific areas. 1, appoint a chairperson for an executive steering committee for the Youth Reinvestment Grant. 2, delegate authority to that chairperson to work with the BSCC staff to establish a diverse ESC with relevant subject matter expertise and modify membership as needed. And 3, authorize the ESC to oversee development of the Youth Reinvestment Grant, request for proposals, and make funding recommendations. With your approval of those 3 items today, we would then be looking at getting a posting up on our website to inform the public about this new grant program and to provide an open opportunity for interested individuals to submit statements of interest in serving on the ESC. We would invite the return of any members who served on the original ESC, but will round out the membership with others as needed. We anticipate having the ESC recruitment up on our website and open for a period of 2 weeks. And then just as a final note, I would mention that our website will offer an opportunity for public comment. That concludes my report on this item.
Thank you, Kimberly. As Kimberly mentioned, for her report, we are monitoring AB 1454 and providing technical assistance as that bill moves through the legislature. I would ask the board if there are any comments or questions about this item before we designate a chair. Seeing none, hearing none, I would ask for public comment on this issue. Seeing none, hearing none, I would now turn to the issue of a chair. I would ask if David Steinhardt is still willing and able to chair this next leg of the journey.
If that was a question to me, I am re-enlisting. Yes, willing and able. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Appreciate it. Now I would once more, I guess we don't have to go back to public comment. We did that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And now we would go to looking for approval of the recommendations as stated by staff.
Dean Grouden, I'll make the motion that we approve staff's recommendation, including Dave Steinhardt's appointment as chair.
All right, I'm
Ralph
looking for.
Beers will second.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Ralph will second.
Thank you, Ralph. And Adam, will you take roll and the vote? All in favor?
All right. Chair Penner.
Approve.
Mr. Diaz.
Approve.
Mr. Green.
Approve.
Mr. Grouden.
Aye.
Mr. Gore.
Approve.
Mr. Ortola.
Approved.
Mr. Barranco.
Approve.
Mr. Mills.
Approve.
Mr. Budnick,
Approved.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Tornor.
Approve.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you, Adam. Just a quick reminder, if you're not speaking, if you wouldn't mind muting your phones, we're getting a slight amount of interference. Moving on now to item C, the Youth Tribal Diversion Grant, appointment of a chair and establishment of an executive steering committee. I believe we still have the same fabulous presenter on this.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. Yes, indeed, this is still Kimberly Bouchard, and talking now about the Tribal Youth Diversion Grant. So similar to the last item, I am requesting your approval to move forward with the steps necessary to begin grant development work. In this case, we have new funding of $10 million for the Tribal Youth Diversion Grant. While last year's Youth Reinvestment Grant designated $1 million for tribes, the 2019 Budget Act includes an additional $10 million exclusively for tribes. These new funds are available until June 30th of 2024. So similar to the first round of funding, we will be able to offer a grant term of at least 3 years. As with the first round of funding, eligible applicants for this new $10 million are federally recognized Indian tribes in California. These funds continue to be intended to support diversion programs for Indian children using interventions that are trauma-informed, community-based, and health-based. Now, given the limited amount of funding that was available last year, and given the relative few number of proposals that were received in the first round, which may in fact have been due to the fact that there was only $1 million available statewide, staff is recommending that a new RFP be released. Because we expect there to be different criteria as part of this new RFP, prior applicants who were not funded in the first round would be required to submit their proposals in order to be considered for this new funding. And we believe this is critical to ensuring a fair process for all prospective applicants. So in order to get the process started and get these funds into the field as soon as possible, we are again requesting that you take action in 3 specific areas. And just like the last one, the first is to appoint a chairperson for an executive steering committee, specifically for the Tribal Youth Diversion Grant. The second is to delegate authority to that chairperson to work with BSCC staff to establish a diverse ESC with relevant subject matter expertise and to modify membership as needed. And then third is to authorize the ESC to oversee the development work for the request for proposals for this tribal diversion grant and to make funding recommendations. So as with the last agenda item, if we obtain your approval today, the next step would be to post information on our website, letting the public know about this new funding and offering an open opportunity for interested individuals to submit statements of interest in serving on the Executive Steering Committee. Again, we will invite the return of any members who served on the Tribal Advisory Group from the first round of funding, and we'll also encourage participation by former Youth Reinvestment Grant ESC members. In addition, we will enlist other members as needed to ensure adequate representation. And again, with this one, we are anticipating that the ESC recruitment will be open for a period of 2 weeks. And finally, just again to note, as I did on the last one, our website will offer an opportunity for public comment. And that concludes my report for this item.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Before we move forward on this item, I'm, first of all, delighted we have this much money available. When you saw the list of applicants for the last RFP, it made it very clear that there's a need out there. So it's really nice to see the response of the legislature to that need. The first thing we should do is appoint a chairperson for this executive steering committee, and I'm pleased to tell you that we have approached Mike Urtola, who has graciously said he would chair this executive steering committee. My appreciation to you, Chief Urtola, should this nomination be adopted. And now I would turn to the board and ask for any discussion. I heard somebody come on. Anybody? Hearing no discussion by the board, I would ask if there's any members of the public at any of the remote locations that would like to comment. And if so, would you state your name and your location? Okay, seeing, I hope I'm giving enough time for public comment. I'm hoping that worked. If you're making an approach, I'll stop myself if I hear anything. Adam, I'm looking for, actually, board, I'm looking for a first and a second on adoption of this recommendation.
This is Gordon Barranco. I move the recommendation.
Steinhardt, seconds.
We have a first and a second. Adam, will you do us the honor?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Groudon,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
Approve.
Mr. Urtola,
Yes.
Mr. Barranco,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Budnick,
Aye.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Tornor.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you very much, board and Adam. That concludes item C. Moving on now to item D, California Violence Intervention Program, or as we call it, CalVIP, appointment of a chair and an establishment of an executive steering committee.
And Madam Chair, this is Aaron from Sacramento. Before we begin this item, we do have a number of recusals. We would ask Mr. Barranco, who sits on the nonprofit of Community Youth and Outreach. He is going to step out of the room in Sacramento. Ms. Tornor, who is an employee of the city of Sacramento, is stepping out as well, who's a prior CalVIP recipient. And then we would ask Mr. Budnick, who's involved with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, to mute his phone from his location. All these board members may have remote interests within the meaning of Government Section 1091, which is why they're recusing themselves. And then I would ask if there are any other board members who are left present, if they have any concerns or would like to recuse themselves at this time. Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Curtin.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Colleen Curtin. I'm a field representative with the Corrections Planning and Grant Programs Division, and I'm here to present Agenda Item D. Like the last two agenda items, Agenda Item D requests your approval to begin the grant-making process by establishing an Executive Steering Committee, or an ESC, to oversee the development of a request for proposals for the California Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant, otherwise known as CalVIP. As part of this request, I ask that you designate a chair to direct this process and authorize staff to work with that chair in establishing an ESC that is diverse in background with relevant subject matter expertise to include individuals who have been directly impacted by violence. You will recall that last year the board approved a total of 36 CalVIP grants funded by the 2017 and 2018 Budget Act appropriations. This year, the Budget Act appropriated a total of $30 million in funding for the CalVIP grant. It is worth noting here that this amount represents a very significant increase in funding from prior years. In fact, since its inception in 2007, this grant, which until 2017 was called the California Gang Reduction Intervention and Prevention Grant, had been funded at $9.2 million annually and had never seen an increase. With this increased investment in CalVIP by the governor and the legislature, staff intends to work closely with the ESC chair to consider hosting public listening sessions and bringing expert stakeholders to share information about cutting-edge research in the area of violence intervention. Of the $30 million authorized in the Budget Act this year, $9 million will be ongoing, $18 million is one-time funding, and an additional $3 million is one-time funding with a specific focus on rural communities, defined as cities with a population of 40,000 or less. These funds are intended to support evidence-based violence prevention and intervention activities. Funding in subsequent years is expected to be $9 million annually. And for your reference, a copy of the Budget Act language can be found in attachment D1. The Budget Act requires the following. Eligibility to apply for CalVIP funding is limited to two types of entities. The first is California cities, and the second is community-based organizations, or CBOs. Successful city applicants must pass through a minimum of 50% of CalVIP funds awarded to one or more CBOs, and all successful applicants must provide a 100% cash or in-kind match. And finally, BSCC must offer a non-competitive grant in the amount of $1 million to the City of Los Angeles. Of the remaining $29 million, the BSCC may retain 5% for administrative costs, and as mentioned previously, $3 million must be offered competitively to cities designated as rural, or CBOs that serve those cities. The remaining $24.5 million will be made available as a competitive grant. Staff will work according to the tentative timeline provided on page 2 of your board report. And I also want to note for board members' information that there is a bill pending in the state legislature, Assembly Bill 1603, that would modify some components of the CalVIP grant. If this bill passes, the Executive Steering Committee will incorporate any changes during the grant development process. If this bill does not pass, we will move ahead according to the language in the Budget Act. In conclusion, staff recommends that the board first appoint a chair for the CalVIP Executive Steering Committee. Second, delegate authority to that chair to work with the BSCC staff to establish an ESC with relevant background and expertise and to modify membership if needed. And third, authorize the ESC to oversee the development of the CalVIP request for proposals and make funding recommendations. As with the two preceding agenda items, with your approval today, the next step will be for BSCC to solicit statements of interest from people who would like to serve on the CalVIP ESC. This will be done through the BSCC website. We will invite individuals who served on the prior CalVIP ESC to return, but we will be looking to recruit several new members. We anticipate that the first ESC meeting will be held sometime in September. And this concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Colleen. Looking to the board for any discussion on this item or questions. I'd now like to address the issue of appointing a chair. Graciously, Chief Mills has agreed to chair this executive steering committee. I'd like to express my appreciation to Chief Mills for that, and now ask for any public comment on the item. Hearing none, back to the board. If there's nothing else, I've asked you for a first and a second on this issue.
Sheriff Gore, recommend approval.
Ralph
Thank
Diaz,
you.
second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Diaz,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Groudon,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Ortola,
Aye.
Mr. Bronco recused from this item, Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick also recused from this item, Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
and Ms. Tornor recused from this item. We have 8 ayes and 3 recused. Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you, Adam. I believe this completes this issue. I invite the recused members of the board to return as we move on to item E.
If you'll give us a minute here in Sacramento, they're making their way in.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, before we begin this item, as the members return, I believe Sheriff Groudon intends to recuse himself from agenda item E, so we'd ask Sheriff Groudon to mute his phone or step out of the room at his location.
Okay.
And And I would also invite if there are any other recusals. I wasn't sure, Chief Mills, whether or not the city of Santa Cruz has allowed for the cultivation or dispensary of marijuana in the city of Santa Cruz, and wanted to check on whether or not his agency might be involved in applying for that funds.
Yeah, the city of Santa Cruz will not be applying for these funds.
Okay, thank you, Chief Mills.
Okay, we have a return of the recused members from the previous item.
They're all back from Sacramento.
Okay, great. Mr. Budnick, are you there?
Present.
Thank you, and I think that completes our list of recusals on the last item. Item E, Helene, are you there?
I am.
Okay, so we now have our staff member present, we have recusals in place, and I'd ask you to begin your presentation, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you and members of the board. My name is Helene Zentner. I'm a field representative with the Corrections Planning and Grants Program, and I'm here before you presenting item E. This agenda item requests the approval of several components for a brand new program here at the BSCC. To appoint a chair to the Proposition 64 Public Health and Safety Grant Program Executive Steering Committee, or ESC. To authorize staff to work with the chair to establish the ESC to be composed of relevant subject matter experts, and to delegate authority to the chair to modify ESC membership if needed, and to authorize this ESC to oversee the development of the request for proposals for the Proposition 64 Public Health and Safety Grant Program and make funding recommendations to this board. In November of 2016, Proposition 64 was passed by the voters of California. This act, known as the Control, Regulate, and Tax Adult Use of Marijuana Act, legalized the use of cannabis for those over the age of 21 and established laws to regulate the cultivation, distribution, sale, and use of cannabis. Per Revenue and Taxation Code, Section 34019, attached to this item as E1, the BSCC will provide grant funds to local governments that assist with law enforcement, fire protection, or other local programming to address public health and safety associated with the implementation of this act. Approximately $26 million will be appropriated to the BSCC this year for the Proposition 64 grant program. Subsequent appropriations will be determined by the Department of Finance for ongoing program distribution. As you've heard in prior agenda items, with your approval today, the BSCC will begin the grant-making process with the designation of a chair and requesting letters of interest from pertinent subject matter experts to determine the Prop 64 ESC membership. This ESC will work to develop a request for proposals, read and rate those proposals, and provide their funding recommendations to this board. Therefore, staff recommends the following board actions. Appoint a chair of the Proposition 64 Public Health and Safety Grant Program ESC. Delegate authority to the chair to work with staff to establish an ESC with subject matter experts relevant to this grant and to modify membership if needed. And to authorize the ESC to oversee the development of the request for proposals and make funding recommendations. This concludes the item E report, and I am happy to answer any questions regarding this item.
Thank you, Helene. I'll begin with the appointment of a chair to this executive steering committee. As you all can see by now, we've had a number of ESCs established at this meeting, and we're growing light on board members able to do that. We also thought that this agenda item, they have a great deal of interest from the field, and in an effort to waylay any possible recusals, I've decided to move forward and chair this item myself. And so if I don't get much pushback from board members, I appoint myself to chair this ESC. I'm not going to really ask for pushback. So if anybody has anything you'd like to say now, I'm willing and able to hear.
Here in Sacramento, I think we're all in agreement. You're the perfect one, Linda. We fought them back, but they agreed.
I waited long enough so I could get a little love. I wasn't that gracious with other members who, are chairing ESCs. I would look to the board now for any comments or questions on this item. Seeing none, I would now reach out to members of the public that would have any comments or questions on this item.
Madam Chair, here in
Yes,
Sacramento, we do have a public comment.
Thank you.
And in Los Angeles, we have a public comment.
Thank you.
In Sacramento, we have George Villa, if you would come up to the podium.
Welcome, George, and we have a 2-minute time limit, so feel free to start at any time.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone, members of the committee. My name is George Villa. I am a program assistant with an organization called MIPA in East Salinas. I'm also currently a UC Davis student. I'm also a recipient of the Department of Juvenile Justice and was formerly the California Youth Authority. And I'm really happy today that this is happening, that there's money that's going to be dispersed and that folks on the table are those that have the subject matter. And I think for me, that means those that understand what's really happening and also understand that the old models weren't successful. That institution and growing up in a very impoverished area, you know, I went through all these systems. I went through all that, and it wasn't until I was in my late 20s where the organization that I work for now took me in and brought me in. Is the same thing what we're trying to do with this Prop 64 funding. You know, I've been incarcerated for years for marijuana, 30-year test, and you know, it really messed me up. I'm not here to talk about my problems. I'm here to talk about the solutions. And I think that, you know, this money and this team should be with the subject matter, those that understand, those that really care, those that know, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with us, our children. It's what happened to us, you know. And I really like how this funding will go to the families, will go to those that have been impacted by it. And like I said, shying away from that old punitive model that doesn't work. I'm currently going inside the Department of Juvenile Justice every Wednesday, and so is Fathers and Family. And these young men in there are really, really trying to come back home. And at times, you know, sometimes it's not the youth, it's the adults that we have to work with. But I've never had any problems going back in there. We you know, there's gardening groups that go in there. There's, you know, culturally responsive healing and trauma informed. Same thing what some of our young people need out in these communities, and there's more success rates in CBOs than in an institution. And why keeps a child, a youth inside of a cell when he can be outside enjoying the benefits and the fruits of people that really care for them? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your remarks. Scott, reaching out to LA.
Yes, we have Dominique Nong with the Children's Defense Fund. Dominique?
Good morning. Again, as Scott said, this is Dominique Nong with the Children's Defense Fund, California. I would like to build a little bit on what my partner George Villa said. I would like to first appreciate the BSCC's acknowledgement that relevant experience does include the lived experience of folks, and in this case, lived experiences dealing with substance use, specifically with regards to marijuana. Given that the governor's May revise and budget includes as one main example of the funding, where the funding can go towards the prevention and intervention programs focused on youth, I would like to encourage the chair and staff to prioritize that area, and particularly when they create the executive steering committee, to really personalize those with personal experience on the most effective ways to support young people and limit both youth substance abuse and sales. And so I would ask that those members specifically include those with experience providing or receiving community-based, healing-centered, culturally relevant services, as well as those directly impacted by the juvenile justice system. And I say that last point because there are very strong connections between marijuana use and abuse with the juvenile and criminal justice system. One of the biggest feeders into the system is both arrests for alleged use and sales, as well as violations of probation for dirty drug tests and poor school attendance that bring our youth deeper into the system. And with those with the people listed, they could really help identify the gaps in programming that are needed. So carry out the intent of Prop 64. And finally, with regards to seeking membership and the application process, I would request that the BSCC continue to publish estimated time commitments, costs, and travel demands, because those are requests that advocates constantly receive from people considering, and that the application period be longer than 2 weeks, because especially with community-based organizations and members, it does take some time to identify people and help them with the application process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Adam in Sacramento. We have one more public comment.
Okay.
I would ask Christian Franco to come up to the podium.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Christian Franco, Justice Policy and Program Assistant for MILPA as well. Just wanted to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said. These funds were intended and passed by our voter base in order to impact those communities most impacted by the war on drugs. And I just want to uplift that these funds are primarily used for sustainable incomes and outcomes. When we talk about child care, it's important that our children are supported through this fund, but also the single mothers, the formerly incarcerated fathers, and juveniles who may have navigated through the system because of prior legislation, right? Nonviolent offenses. These funds are very important in order to get these measures that we have already started to build upon with other, Prop 47, Prop 57, other measures that have gotten our community awake, right? We have formerly incarcerated men, we have formerly incarcerated women, we have juveniles, we have, families that are showing up to the Capitol to advocate. We're building back our communities one by one. And I want to really emphasize on some of the higher needs in certain areas with high arrest rates, with high diversion, such areas as Manteca, Fresno, and Salinas. Really, taking into consideration these areas where, as we build capacity, we need to really embrace these areas with a high target value. It's for me, it's as a member of the community of Yolo County, I look at Fresno County and I say, man, what can I do? How can I support that community? Right? How can I build capacity within my organization, within other CBOs, within other nonprofits to wrap around this community, as well as Stockton, as well as Salinas, as well as Manteca, to really make that change in the heart of the valley? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're now back to the board. Do we have any additional questions or comments after public comment? Hearing none,
This is Chair Penner. I do have one question. So the comment about the application period, and I missed it, but one of the commenters, or the commenter from Los Angeles, what is the application period set for this grant? 2 weeks?
I can answer that. For the comment about request for letters of interest for the Executive Steering Committee, the 2 weeks was for a different agenda item. We have not set it. It will be at a minimum 4 weeks because it is a new grant and because of some of the newness of it, but it will be a minimum of 4 weeks, if not a little bit longer. The whole application process is still to be determined because there are a lot of things to work out in a new grant.
Yeah, thank you. Good catch, Secretary Diaz, because it was, I don't believe you said it. I don't even know we've had our RFP turned around in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that question had to do with the expressing interest to be on the Executive Steering Committee.
All right, okay, all right.
Okay.
So back to the board now. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm looking for a first and a second.
Mike Rotolo will make a motion to approve.
For a second?
Gordon Barranco, second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Adam, you take roll.
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Diaz,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Groudon recused from this item, Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Otola,
Aye.
Mr. Barranco,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick,
Yes.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Tornor.
Approve.
We have 10 approve and 1 recusal. Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving now on to item F. Adult Reentry Grant Program, rental assistance, and warm handoff funding
Madam Chair?
recommendations.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, this is Adam. Could we get Sheriff Groudon back online?
Oh, excellent.
I am
point.
back. Thank you.
See, I knew he was back, Adam. Kind of a fib. Thank you for that reminder, Adam. Welcome back, Sheriff Groudon.
Thank you. I'm back here.
All right. I have no need to restate what the item is, but we're going to move now to item F and invite Colleen Stoner, I believe is in Sacramento, to present this item.
And before we begin, Madam Chair, again, we have a number of recusals on this item pursuant to Government Code Section 1091. Some of our members may have remote interests. At this time, we would ask Sheriff Gore to recuse himself. He sits on the, he's a board member of a nonprofit of Second Chance San Diego. Mr. Budnick, who's involved with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and Mr. Barranco, who has already exited the room and is involved with the nonprofit Community Youth and Outreach. And with that, I would turn it back to Ms. Stoner.
Actually, Mike Rotolo.
Hold on, one moment.
Actually, Mike Rotolo will be recusing himself also. I do contract with one of the award winners.
Okay, so
Thank
the
you, Mr.
record.
Ortola.
So we have Gore, Budnick, Barranco, and Ortola. Barranco has left the room. The other three are muting themselves. Colleen?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Colleen Stoner, a representative with the Corrections Planning and Grant Programs Division. 1 year ago, we began the process of implementing what was then a brand new piece of legislation establishing the Adult Reentry Grant Program. Today, I have two agenda items to present related to the Adult Reentry Grant Program, Item F and Item G. Item F will deal with the Executive Steering Committee funding recommendations for two components of the Adult Reentry Grant Program, the rental assistance and the warm handoff reentry services components. Item G will deal with a request for approval for the grant development process for the third component of the Adult Reentry Grant Program, the rehabilitation of existing property. I'll start first with F, and just as a reminder about what the Adult Reentry Grant Program is all about, it was established through the Senate Bill 840 Budget Act of 2018 and appropriated $50 million of funding. The Board of State and Community Corrections is to award this funding through a competitive bid process to community-based organizations to support individuals who were formerly incarcerated in state prison. Of the $50 million, $25 million is to be allocated for rental assistance, $15 million is for the rehabilitation of existing property, $9.3 million is to support the warm handoff and reentry of people transitioning from prison to communities. $150,000 is set aside to support the Berkeley Underground Scholars Initiative, and $500,000 was to go to BSCC for the costs of administering the grant and reporting out on the programs. Additional funding was appropriated through the passage of the Budget Act of 2019, which provided an additional $32.9 million for the Adult Reentry Grant. And this is to be split 50-50 between rental assistance and warm handoff reentry services. The appropriations from the Budget Act of 2019 increased available funds to approximately now $25 million for the warm handoff reentry services and approximately $41 million to go to rental assistance. Of these amounts, we are proposing to award the funding recommendations before you today. At the July 12th, 2018 board meeting, the board approved the use of the funding for this grant and authorized an executive steering committee to oversee the development of a request for proposal process. The board appointed Chair Penner and board member Tornor as co-chairs and delegated authority to the co-chairs to establish an executive steering committee with relevant subject matter expertise, and that is attachment F1 in your board packet. During the request for proposal process, a number of policy and legal and programmatic requirements and responsibilities emerged related to the state housing laws and regulations that are very new to the BSCC. And so one component of the program, the rehabilitation of existing property and buildings, was particularly impacted by state housing laws and regulations, and it was decided that further evaluation and research was needed to determine how to address these potential responsibilities and compliance issues. So it was set aside. However, to keep the project moving forward, the Executive Steering Committee completed their work on the development of the RFP and have read and rated proposals for the other two components, rental assistance and the warm handoff reentry services. The rehabilitation of property component will be discussed with you in Agenda Item G, but I'm here to talk to you about some of the highlights of the RFP that was developed for rental assistance and warm handoff. In November, I'm sorry, that's not correct. Yeah, no, yes, it is. In October, rather, of 2018, and again in November, the committee came together on 3 occasions to develop the request for proposal process. Some of the elements of the RFP are that it is a 42-month grant period beginning August 1st, 2019, and concluding February 28th, 2023. Eligible applicants considered for the grant award are to be community-based organizations with a 501c3 status. Applicants could apply for either rental assistance or warm handoff reentry services. A rental assistance applicant could apply for up to $3 million for the 42-month grant period, and a warm handoff applicant could apply for up to $500,000 for the 42-month grant period. There is no match requirement. During the RFP development process, we learned that this project is subject to the provisions of the Welfare and Institutions Code, sections 8255 through 8257, which require that a state agency that's administering a program related to housing that supports homelessness or people at risk of being homeless, that they must incorporate the core components of the Housing First model in their program design. So that was included in the process and in the design of the request for proposal. As indicated in your board reports, the types of services that a rental assistant applicant could provide could include, but are not limited to, short-term emergency housing, permanent supportive housing, rent subsidies, moving cost, credit repair. Those that may be applying for warm handoff reentry services could use their funding for such things that include, but are not limited to, reach-in services, case management services, transportation, food, employment, behavioral health care, systems navigation. In January, the board approved the release of the Adult Reentry Grant RFP with a proposal due date of March 25th. In February, a bidders conference was conducted. We had approximately 60 people here in this room, and many more attended through the live stream. A total of 161 proposals were received, requesting nearly $205 million. And of the 161 applications, 147 were forwarded to the Executive Steering Committee to be read and ranked. That is attachment F5. Of the 147 applicants, 58 were rental proposals and 89 were warm handoff proposals. Of the 147 applicants, 79 were from the southern part of the state, 10 in the central area, 42 in the Bay Area, and 16 applicants represented the northern parts of the state, meaning from Sacramento on up. The Executive Steering Committee came back together for their final convening on June 18th and 19th to develop the list of 69 funding recommendations before the board today. For a quick reference, these ranked recommendations are provided within the tables of your board report. There are also summaries of the 69 recommended projects in attachment F6. And when you get a chance to review them, you'll see there are many exciting and innovative projects that are poised and ready to launch that will have a profound effect on the state of California and available resources for individuals transitioning from prison to communities. I want to give a shout out to the chairs, Ms. Turner and Chair Penner, along with the Executive Steering Committee and our research unit who put an extreme amount of work onto this project and did a heavy lift in dealing with this massive amount of proposals that were received. So at this time, on behalf of the Adult Reentry Grant Program Executive Steering Committee, we are recommending that the board take the following actions. Fully fund proposals as listed in the tables in your board report. Offer partial awards to Manifest Works. They are a one handoff applicant. And a partial award to St. John's Well Child and Family Center. They are a rental assistant applicant. Both of them fell at the funding cutoff points as listed in the tables of your board report. We'd like also to get approval to authorize staff to continue to make awards from the proposal ranked order list if any applicant is unable to accept the award or relinquishes the award by first offering it to any partial awardees. Then authorize staff to continue to make awards as noted above if the staff determines that the follow-up award-making process, and we've discovered that an applicant that was recommended for award is ineligible, or if a grantee becomes ineligible during the grant cycle. This concludes my report. I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Colleen. I think this is incredibly exciting, aggressive. The amount of proposals that are awarded, the amount of money going out into the field is really a great statement about the shift in the legislature paying close attention to that warm handoff and rental assistance. We all know homelessness is an enormous issue in the state of California, and for this population to be designated as recipients of this kind of funding is really, really exciting. Francine, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add as we move forward on this?
Real quick, Chair Penner, thank you. I would like to thank staff again and just reiterating how much work they put in helping us as ESC members to understand everything that went into it. And it was really exciting for me to be a part of this ESC, to see all of the good work that is happening in the community by the CBOs, a lot that I was not familiar with, and the passion that I read in the proposals that were presented. Some things that were currently taking place, and then other things that people were proposing to do to really just help with reducing recidivism and making the community a better place for all those that are reentering the community coming out of the CDC system. It was inspiring, so I was happy to be a part of that, so thank you.
Thank you. Turning to the board, any questions or comments?
David Steinhardt has a question and a comment. You can hear me?
Thanks.
Okay. First of all, I mean, this is just a great grant. We are addressing the reentry side in a way that just hasn't been done before, so it's such a worthwhile endeavor. But I just wanted to echo what has already been said about the amount of work that was imposed on BSCC to make this happen. 147 proposals on this, tiny little ESC with all the staff working on it. It was just a monumental amount of work. I just wanted to add my appreciation for that. My technical question, there are really two, but one is, this is what happens when you read all the fine print, I guess. I saw that in the statutes, the budget language, the encumbrance time limits fell short of the grant periods. I mean, the encumbrance limits were ending in 2022 in June for the second wave funding, but the grant periods are going out another 8 months. So I guess for Colleen, the question is, how do we support the additional time given what looks like encumbrance time limits? And I'll just pop my second question, I guess, which is, I gather that the ESC anticipated the second wave funding and approved enough grants so that the new piggyback amount of $33 million could float in to the approvals. So I'm just assuming that that is okay and that you anticipated as an ESC that there was more funding and approved enough proposals to use up the new funds. I'm not sure if there were any issues around that, and I'm just asking. So encumbrance time limits and how the new funding amount was pulled into the already approved grants.
So I'll answer the second question first, and then Mary Joles will address the issue related to timing on the funding. Yes, we have far exceeded the number of recommended proposals to use up the available funds, even with the new money. So we, if I'm understanding your question correctly, we have many more applicants who, even with the new funding, will not be able to be funded because we will have run out of money, even with the new funding coming in.
Okay.
And then, David, this is Mary Jules. To answer your question about the spending authority, a rather technical internal feature of how the state administers its budgets is that there are 2 years beyond what's stated in the budget for the actual expenditures related to the fact that we have an encumbrance date that expires on that date. So a highly technical sort of internal feature of the budget.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, because I wouldn't have been that concise or clear about that answer. I appreciate your help on that. Now looking to any other members of the board, any questions or comments? Looking now to any public in any of the remote locations that wish to comment on this item.
Madam Chair, in Sacramento, we have 3 public comment.
Okay.
And I'll call up Sammy Nunez.
Can we hang on just a minute, Adam?
Yeah,
Do we have any other public comments in any other remote locations that we can get in the queue?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we have one at the Los Angeles location.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Adam, take it away from Sacramento.
Okay, can I have Sammy Nunez, Shay Holloman, and Raymond Aguilar come up to the podium?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, Board. My name is Sammy Nunez. I'm the Executive Director of Fathers and Families of San Joaquin, located in Stockton. Our mission is to promote the social, cultural, spiritual, and economic renewal of the most vulnerable families in Stockton, the greater San Joaquin Valley. Just here to express our appreciation for the award, should it go through. At our agency, we've been providing critical services to the reentry population since our inception. We have actually promoted family reunification and expanded the on-ramp to the Opportunity Highway that's been closed off for so many of our folks. At our agency, we show our people love and give them a reason to live with purpose. Our healing-centered family reunification and stabilization programs have resulted in the lowest recidivism rate 4 out of the last 5 years with our current AB 109 population. 2 of the most persistent barriers for our folks to stabilize and successfully reenter has been lack of employment opportunities and housing insecurity and homelessness. We just secured a partnership with the Butte County Office of Education and Caltrans to provide work therapy services for formerly incarcerated folks. And now with this housing assistant opportunity, this is gonna go a long way to furthering our mission at stabilizing our folks that are coming back home from incarceration. We wanna thank you for the rigor and all the work that you put in to advance this, and really just wanna say thank you on behalf of Stockton and San Joaquin County for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Shay Holloman. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I've been told that being nervous is a good thing. It means that you're gonna speak from the heart, right?
Nice.
So my boss spoke a little bit about people being on parole. We have a lot of people come through our doors who are on probation. I was one of those people who was on parole. I was incarcerated for 11 years of my life. Upon being released, about the last week, they kept me in prison a week longer, actually 2 weeks longer than what I was supposed to be, because I didn't have housing. So that meant 2 weeks extra that I had to spend away from my daughter, who was 9 months when I was incarcerated. Upon being released, she was 10 years old. I've been out of prison for about 3 years. I just got off of parole. I feel really honored and blessed to be able to help people who are on parole. Who better to help them than me? I actually know what they need. When I was released from prison, I didn't have a place to stay. They put me in a program for people who was on drugs. I didn't have an addiction. I never suffered from a drug addiction ever in my life. I felt that was really unfair. Because I was placed in that program, I wasn't able to see my daughter. I wasn't able to be out in the free world just yet. They felt I wasn't ready. They took my phone from me, which meant I was not gonna be able to still speak to my baby. My coworker told me, don't be nervous about this position, Shay. You're gonna be able to help people who was in your same situation. I actually know what they need. I know how to get housing for them. I know how to teach them how to catch the bus and things of that nature. So, I get a little bit emotional about speaking about this because I slept in my car. Fresh out of prison, I had to sleep in my car. I was so scared I didn't have the resources. I didn't have anybody to call. I didn't have any family to turn to. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing for us.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. Hello. My name is Raymond Agler. I'm with Fathers and Families, and I'm also formerly incarcerated. Many of my years, my juvenile years and my adult years have been spent in the penitentiary. I spent 26 years in prison since the age of 15 till the age of 41. I've been home now 3 years, and one of my biggest fears was housing. Where would I go? Where would I live after spending the majority of my life in the system and not knowing where I would be able to stay if I was going to be homeless? I remember when I was told that I was going to be released after serving 26 years, I was told within 10 days, hey, you're no longer a lifer, you're being paroled. You need to give us a housing of where you're going to stay. I had nowhere to really go. So I asked family members, if anyone that would take me in. My brother was very fortunate to help me out, but when I came with him, I actually went to several different places. I went to sleeping on the floor of my father's one-bedroom apartment for a while, went staying with families and friends, and since I've been out for the past 3 years, I actually have been successful because of nonprofit organizations like Fathers and Families. As was mentioned earlier, the Family Strengthening Department, the last 4 or 5 years, we have had the lowest recidivism rate because of all the work that has been done in helping formerly incarcerated not only get housing opportunity, but job opportunities, and just to be successful, to know where we're gonna go and have, this is more like, not just a job, it's like a family environment where they understand formerly incarcerated people, and they believe that if we do not have housing, that is a higher chance of us to recidivate, to return back to penitentiary. Since I've been home, I've been able to advocate for a lot of adults in the system that are coming home. I'm thankful to now that I've been home, I have been able to go back into the system to help to facilitate programs in DJJ. Thankful to people who give us opportunities to go back and facilitate proud parenting. So thank you, Helen, for giving us those opportunities to go back to teach these young men that when they come home, how to have a successful plan as fathers, but also to let them know that if this grant goes through and we are fortunate enough, they would also be able to help them with housing. One of the main things that men are afraid of, and women, is housing. Are they gonna come home? And where would they come home to? And what type of warm handoff are they gonna be receiving? With this grant, it would help so many individuals, so that way we don't have to live in fear, because there are so many people in our area that are homelessness, that are suffering because of homelessness. This opportunity would give us a great amount of support to help so many men and women that are just afraid of, okay, if they have a job, where would they be staying? So with this grant and this opportunity, it's a bold step, and I thank you all, those of you that make the decisions. New board member, thank you so much for coming and joining. Sad to see Leticia Perez go. I spoke before her when I first came home 3 years ago, and thanked the board and panel that when I came home, I didn't know I was gonna come home at all. And when I lived my life in there, I didn't know if I was gonna make it out. And I've been successful so far, and thankful for all the opportunities and grant opportunities. And this is gonna help so many people that don't know that these things are going on. And for the nonprofit organizations, those of us like Fathers and Families has really helped so many people nationwide. and also all the other nonprofits that are here that support formerly incarcerated people. So I want to thank everyone for all the opportunities that you've given formerly incarcerated people like myself, my sister Shay, who basically poured her heart out and expressed how she was homeless. You know, I've almost went through that same thing. And now I'm blessed to have a home and a job. And I'm also now going back into the facilities as a proud parent of the curriculum to teach other individuals to come home and to be successful. Thank you guys all for this opportunity. Thank you for the bold move. Thank you for the courageousness. And thank you for believing in all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is that it for Sacramento, Adam?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's it for Sacramento.
Okay, moving to LA.
Yes, LA. Thanks, Madam Chair and the board. My name is Brandon Smith. Myself, along with Royal Ramey, we're the co-founders of FFRP, which is the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program. Actually, we're number 47 on this attachment, F6. I'm here on behalf of myself and the organization to say thank you to BSCC for allocating us these funds. FFRP is an organization that helps people who are incarcerated in California's fire camps get gainful employment once they're released. Speaking personally, I remember in 2012, I was locked up at Wasco when a counselor recommended to me that I should go to fire camp, and I really didn't want to do it, but I did. Over the years, I actually grew to love the job and wanted to go do it once I got home. When I got home, though, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do to get the job. So I struggled for a few years, asked around, tried to figure things out, and eventually I got it. It took some years, some tears, a lot of people telling me no, and that I was barking up the wrong tree, but I eventually did it. I ended up getting a job working as a professional wildland firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service. And I know, because we go back to camps, that a lot of other people in my same situation want to do it. When folks out here on these fires see, when we go talk to them and say, hey, you know, I was in camp as well, their eyes get big and they want to figure out how they can do it and they're inspired. But one of the things that we realize is that my situation is a little bit different than other people because I have some support. I actually had like family at home, friends. I ended up meeting some people, some professionals in the field who helped me navigate the maze and figure out a way to become a professional firefighter. Everybody doesn't have that. And because they don't have that, myself and Royal Ramey and a couple of others, we decided to create FFRP so that we can be that support system for the people who don't have those opportunities. So it's been our goal since then and now to continue being that family structure, that support system for people to help get gainful employment once they come home, whether they want to be wildland firefighters or not. We've been doing that since 2014, and today we're happy to say we've been doing that since 2014, and we've been happy to say that so far we've helped over 60 people obtain a gainful career either as a wildland firefighter or in some relevant field. So we just wanted to say thank you for your support. Now, with the vote that you guys will hopefully make, our capacities are going to increase, and that number is going to continue to grow. So thank you. We look forward to working with you all, and we look forward to the future. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I haven't heard any other public comment raised, or we completed the public comment portion. Thanks to everyone who made public comments. Certainly, you know, a testimonial to this money and the good work that's going to happen as a result of it from each of you as you tell your personal stories. So we appreciate that as a board. Back to the board. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm looking for whoever gets to make this happy first and second on this great proposal before us.
I, Ralph Diaz's motion to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Secretary.
Andy Mills, seconds.
Thank you very much, Chief Mills. We have a first and a second. Adam, will you do the roll call?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Diaz,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Grouden,
Dean.
Mr. Grouden? Oh, I think that was an aye. Mr.
Yeah.
Gore recused from this item. Mr. Ortola, Mr. Barranco, and Mr. Budnick also recused. Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Tornor.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes and 4 recused. Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you to all the board members on this item. Moving on now to item G. Colleen,
Yes, thank
still
you.
there?
I'm
Okay.
still here. I'm still Colleen Stoner, and this,
Colleen, Madam
Yes.
Chair, do we have everyone who recused back on the line?
Oh, excellent point again. It's hard to do that when they're not here. Let's see. We have,
Sheriff Gore's back.
and I see, Mr. Urtola's in the room with me, so he's unmuted himself. Judge Branco,
He just
Budnick?
returned.
And Scott?
Scott Budnick?
God is so back and very happy.
Okay, thank you. All right, Colleen, it was user error again from this end. I forgot to bring back recusals, so now you may launch.
And before we start that again, Madam Chair, this is Aaron from Sacramento. I did want to check, I have no listed recusals, at least no one's told me that they want to recuse, but I want to give that opportunity to any board members if they thought their entities or employing entities or nonprofits that they work with might be involved in this grant. It's a pretty unique grant, as we've discussed before. And
Hearing none?
hearing and seeing none.
All right.
ready to proceed. This agenda item G requests the board appoint a chair of the scoring committee and approve a grant development process for the component of the adult reentry grant program, which we referred to last time, and that's the rehabilitation of existing property. As outlined in agenda item F, the Senate Bill 840 Budget Act of 2018 established the adult reentry grant program and appropriated $50 million in funding, and requested and required that the Board of State and Community Corrections award the funding through a competitive bid process to community-based organizations to support offenders who are formerly incarcerated in state prison. As identified in Agenda F, $25 million is to be allocated for rental assistance, $15 million is to be allocated for the existing property of and buildings, and $9.3 million is to support the warm handoff and reentry of people transitioning from prison to communities. With the actions taken by the board today in agenda item F, two of those components have now been completed, the rental assistance and the warm handoff reentry services. As you will recall from agenda item F, the third component, $15 million for the rehabilitation of existing property, required continued research and review, and so it was pulled off of the larger grant development process and set aside. Over the past several months, staff have had extensive discussions with subject matter experts and has determined that this component of the program should be established in a way that limits the scope of the projects to those that are feasible for the BSCC to administer and provide oversight. The staff proposed to develop an RFP for this component that will be consistent with the overarching elements of the Adult Reentry Grant Program, in that eligible applicants would be nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, and the grant amounts would be between $3 million and $5 million. Staff is committed to getting these funds out as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and therefore proposes the following grant development process and tentative timeline. A request for proposals will be drafted and posted to the BSCC website for a 30-day public comment period, which we anticipate to be in the month of August 2019. The chair will establish a scoring committee to read and rate the proposals, and the Adult Reentry Grant ESC members, or previous members, will be given priority for membership on this scoring committee. We will provide a recruitment notice on our website very soon for other individuals who may be interested in becoming a member of that scoring committee. After the RFP has been posted to the web for a 30-day public comment period, staff will review the public comments and update the RFP as needed, and then return to the board for approval and release of the RFP at the September 2019 meeting. If approved, the RFP will go to the field for 4 or 5 weeks, and the scoring committee then will come together and read and rate the proposals and develop funding recommendations. Tentatively, funding recommendations would come to the board at the November meeting, and subject to approval, the grant cycle would be effective in November of 2019. This is a pretty ambitious timeline. As a contingency, if we hit any unanticipated delays that might prevent that timeline from proceeding as we want it to, we will come to the board at the first meeting in 2020. So on behalf of the Adult Reentry Grant Program, for the rehabilitation of existing property component, the staff recommends the board take the following actions. Appoint a chair for the scoring committee and approve the grant development process. This concludes my report. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Colleen. Regarding the chair for this committee, of course, this is the third leg of the journey on the grant we just awarded, and in the interest of continuity, I think I will volunteer to stay with it. Understanding, Francine, I'm not going to put you on the spot right here and now, because it's kind of an on-the-spot thing. Please don't feel compelled to sign on, because I know it's a heavy lift, but we expect this to be a very quick turnaround.
Linda, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it's gang, which means we roll together. So I'll be with you.
I was hoping it was gang. God, now I got a new term. I'm going to use that all weekend. Gang all weekend. Thank you, Francine. I really appreciate it. That was really cruel of me, but very effective. Thank you for signing on. I would now submit we have a chair and a co-chair, and I would look for any comments from the board on this item as we move forward. Any comments from members of the public on this item?
Madam Chair, here in Sacramento, we have one comment.
Thank you. Anybody in LA, San Diego, Lassen? Okay, moving forward with one comment from Sacramento at this juncture.
Renee Menard, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Renee Menard with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice in San Francisco. We're an organization that does both policy research but also direct services. And one of our direct services is actually a women's housing program for women who are either transitioning out of incarceration or who are doing some sort of alternative sentencing that was in partnership with the probation department in San Francisco. And so as both a policy organization and a direct service provider with roots in this work, I just want to thank the BSCC staff, the ESC co-chairs, and the members for all of the work that went into this. I know that through the process, housing can be pretty complex, and I just thank the BSCC staff and the ESC for taking the time to really ensure that this component of the housing rehabilitation piece be doled out and distributed effectively and responsibly. And in this next stage, I just want to just acknowledge the folks who did receive funding today and the community members that came up. It is not easy to come up and share your stories. And so I think that just really goes to further recognize the strength of the communities that are impacted by incarceration and who are really leading this reform effort to change the way that we support people during reentry and through the entire process. And I just hope that moving forward with the development of a scoring panel and with the other ESCs that were discussed for creation today, that we continue to recognize the importance of having the voices of people who are formerly incarcerated, community members that have been justice involved and justice impacted, and the service providers that are doing work on the ground, that we just continue to prioritize that representation on the ESCs and on this scoring panel. Thank you again for all of your work.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Well, before we vote on this item, I'd like to gang one more time and hope that many of the members of this Executive Steering Committee stay with us and we can continue to utilize their expertise And finally, but not of any insignificance at all, I'd like to really praise and share my gratitude with the staff for everything they did on this. This was a heavy, heavy lift. It was a new subject matter for all of us, and the staff did such a great job. They made it seem seamless and effortless, but I know it was not. It was massive. So my appreciation to you, Colleen, to the research staff, which, you know, I shouldn't even be able to say research out loud, but they are so efficient and effective, and my many, many questions are probably slightly irritating. I just want you to know how much I appreciate all you did to make this come together, and I really am excited about the impacts we're going to have on the state of California and the justice-involved population this is going to serve. So with that said, any
Madam
other?
Chair, this is
Yeah.
Adam in Sacramento. We have one more public comment on this item. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I just had my beautiful moment. Okay, let's do that.
Sorry I'm a little late. Good morning.
Yes.
I just felt compelled to come up here and
Tell us
share
who you are, please. I'm
a few
sorry.
words. My name's Daniel Silva. I'm the founder of Self-Awareness and Recovery, an organization that was created behind prison walls. I've been out here going on 5 years now. We were blessed in 2017 to have received a CDCR grant that actually helped get us going, get things started out here in the community. I really believe that we needed to bring the program to the community so it can be a 360 model, something that was planned behind prison walls. And what I mean by a 360 model is, you know, you help those coming home that need help to succeed in the community, but you also stop the young people that are out here thinking everything's fun and games, that are on their way to prison. You break that cycle and you stop it. And that's one of the things that I want to thank CDCR for giving us the opportunity, because through their financial assistance given to us through a grant to be able to do work back at the prison, we were able to utilize the leftover money to do just that, to reach out to the youth, to go to the schools, to go to juvenile halls, to go everywhere where there was youth that needed to hear a real message that there ain't nothing behind prison walls. We used it, and we're surviving, and we're hoping that what's going on right now will help us get a renewed opportunity. And, you know, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity of being able to put in for such a grant, you know, and the fact that the money is now being made available to CBOs in the communities that need it. A lot of people have been struggling, but nevertheless, I want to let you know that I'm so thankful. I'm grateful every morning that I have this job, that I have this opportunity to reach out and go help people. And hopefully we'll be able to help those coming home and really be able to do more and provide more services. Statewide, I believe, because this money's, LA, everywhere, correct? And so I just wanted to share, and I wanted to thank you this morning.
Thank you very much. All right, back to the board. Any other comments? Okay, I'm looking for a first and second on this item.
First, we'll make a motion to.
Budnick on the second.
Okay, we have a first and a second, Ortola and Budnick, I believe is what I captured. Adam?
All right. Chair Penner?
Aye.
Mr. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Groudon?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Ortola?
Aye.
Mr. Barranco?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Budnick?
Aye.
Mr. Steinhardt?
Aye.
Ms. Tornor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. We have now
Pulled off a miracle.
pulled off a miracle remotely, and in just a moment, I'm gonna open for public comments on any item any board member or member of the public would like to make at this juncture before I call the meeting closed. We are not going to have a legal briefing today, and I just want to say that while we don't like to do remote meetings, the July meeting is always an issue wherein we are trying to make quick appointments and reactions and actions to the budget proposals, and by doing this remotely, we're able to move an agenda that, you know, is always painstakingly slow just a little bit faster. So I appreciate all of you for your time on the phone. I really don't need any thank you notes for how your drive home is going to be much quicker today than it is usually, especially you from Lassen County who may be on this phone. Thank you all for that participation, and now I'm looking for any comments before we adjourn the meeting. And seeing one from Director Howard, who would like to finalize.
Chime in. Thank you so much, Chair Penner. Terrific meeting. Really happy that we got through all of this work, and I do want to also echo the thanks to our absolutely amazing staff who have just been putting in so much time and effort, and I know the board members appreciate it. I just want to add my thanks. I wanted to make an announcement in connection with our next meeting. It's Thursday, September 12th. Earlier, when we had posted our schedule, we had indicated the plan that meeting would be in Los Angeles County. We have come to find out that we have an opportunity to co-locate our board meeting with a CPOC meeting in San Diego. Their location is on Mission Bay. Adam is still working to finalize the meeting arrangements in terms of hotel and that sort of thing. So I wanted to be sure to tell board members and the interested members of the public that will be in San Diego. I also want to let board members know that Adam will be in touch with you right away. If you know for certain, please communicate with Adam ASAP if you can be there, if you can't be there, so we can get a good, accurate count. And of course, finding hotel rooms within our state rate is increasingly challenging. So we really appreciate your help in just getting that information to Adam so we can get our San Diego meeting put together for September the 12th. That's all I had, Chair Penner. Thank you.
And I will welcome you with open arms to San Diego. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair Board. Yay! Okay, any other public comment before we adjourn the meeting?
Madam Chair, we have one public comment. He was actually for agenda item B, George Villa.
Okay.
He turned in his card a little after the agenda, so I'm having him come up now.
I apologize for being late. You know, along with what everyone else is sharing today, I think, you know, this is a direction that California needs to go, and I'm sure that other states will also follow, and I think it's the best possible, healthiest way that we can improve our conditions here in California. And I'm also really grateful to be here and to have a job, a home. You know, I go to UC Davis, and I come from these systems, and I really benefited from CBOs and from local stakeholders. You know, I even have a nonprofit boxing gym back home. My nephew's a world champion, and we have a space for young people to come in, and I can just see this as something that's going to grow more and seeds of love, and not other things that are impacting us all. I just want to say thank you again to everyone in this room and everyone on the call and everywhere else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other public comment from anywhere? None? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Chair Penner, hold on 1 second. In Sacramento, we have one more.
Adam.
Sorry, just real briefly. I know it's been a long day for you guys, long morning. Good afternoon or good evening, good morning. My name is Henry Ortiz. I'm with the co-founder of the Self-Awareness and Recovery nonprofit organization, also a member of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. And I'm out here in Sacramento, and this funding has been greatly needed in our communities. A lot of us, we really work ourselves off. There is no off time. Our work is at 3 in the morning on Saturday to go mediate a fight that's occurring in the south of Sacramento, or just you know, going to schools or going to the prisons or doing reentry navigation. carrying multiple hats as a grassroots nonprofit because we don't have the funding for staff and to grow as an organization like we will eventually will now that these opportunities are afforded to us. So, you know, we don't even have health benefits. We don't have paid vacations, right? All we got is like these conferences that are paid for us through these scholarships. And so, nevertheless, I'm happy and I'm honored to be able to do the service that my Creator called me to do. But I also want to thank you guys for coming together, for working with us, for hearing us out and making decisions accordingly to meet the needs of our population that's been oppressed and hyper-criminalized based on trauma that was never dealt with in at home or in our school system because we didn't have the data at that time. Now that we have the data, now that we have more information, now we can make more informed a budget decisions. So thanks a lot for everything you guys have done for our community-based organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Adam.
I believe that is all in
Oh,
Sacramento.
thank you. And in all seriousness, thank you to the public that does comment. It's meaningful. The testimonials make a difference to the board. With that said, the meeting is adjourned, and you may all hang up now.